Welcome to the study of Sotah, page 20, our 19th day of study. And we continue what we were talking yesterday about the woman backing off and saying she doesn't want to drink. And at what point can she back off anymore and we force her to drink? So we find in Rabbi Akiva sort of a contradiction, because elsewhere Rabbi Akiva says that until the parchment was erased into the potion, she can back off. Once the parchment was erased, even if the mincha, the fistful from her offering, was not brought on, then she can't back off anymore. And here he says until the fistful was actually brought on the altar, which was afterwards, she can back off. So it's a contradiction in Rabbi Akiva himself. So the Gemara answers, and which happens often, that the Gemara answers that there are two different Tanoim, two different of the scholars who quote Rabbi Akiva differently, that a different opinion what Rabbi Akiva said of when the point of no return is, when she cannot back off anymore. Now we have an interesting question. What happens if she says, I'm not going to drink, and she was fully in her full control? As we said before, when you're in full control and you say you're not going to drink, there it's a very clear message that you have admitted that you tegil. But then she changed her mind. She said, oh yeah, I'm going to drink. So what's the story then? Do we say that once she said, I'm not going to drink, that means she already admitted, without clearly saying that I had an affair, saying there's nothing for me to drink for, because I basically had an affair, and therefore she cannot change her mind and now say, I want to drink? Or do we say maybe when now she changed her mind, she says, I want to drink, it's showing us that when she said she doesn't want to drink, it's because she was scared. So we're not sure. If the opposite happens, we had a clear directive. But now, in this way, when she says, now I want to drink, we're not sure. Teku, this is one of the things that, well, Yonah, we will come, we will get an answer. The father of Shmuel said that it says you have to put something bitter into the water, because the Torah called the bitter waters, meaning not that they become bitter when they kill her, but they're already bitter before she drinks it. Now we start a new mission. The mission says, before the Megillah, before her parchment with the words that we write on it, it has to be erased into the cup. If she says, I'm not going to drink this potion, so what do you do with the Megillah that you wrote already? She says you have to hide it, because the Megillah, the parchment you write, is for a specific woman. If you're not using it, it's holy as Hashem's name. You hide it. There's a place in the Beis Hamikdash they used to hide different types of parchment that Hashem's name. And her meal offering is sprinkled in the area. It's called the Deshen, which is the place where all of this stuff that was not worthy of going on the Mizbeach, that already too late, past the time, etc., where the first step before it goes out into the dump, the garbage dump, especially for holy things. And you cannot use this Megillah, even to say, let's use it, we'll save money for another woman. Every Megillah has to be specifically written for that person. But what happens if her Megillah was erased and she said, I am Tameh? She said, I'm guilty. I had an affair with the person. So then the water is spilled out, because he can't do anything. We can't give someone else to drink it. And there's no words or letters that are clearly there to be seen, that you have to hide it. And again, her meal offering is sprinkled in the area of the Beis Hadesh, in the place where all the things that were not worthy going on the altar, and the first step to be thrown out in the garbage, the way it was done in the temple. Let's say her Megillah was erased, and she said, I will not drink. She didn't say, I'm not, I'm guilty of the affair. She said, I'm not drinking. So then, like we mentioned yesterday in the Gemara, we brought down that we force her to drink. And what happens when she drinks and she actually is guilty? Her face becomes green, her eyes pop out, all of her veins become very, very inflated. And they say, take her out, because she's about to die. and we don't want the Azara, we don't want that area of the temple to become tamei with a dead person. Now, if she has a schus, the Mishnah said if she had some kind of a merit, the merit can help her sometimes to last for 1 year, some say sometimes 2 years, or even 3 years. So in 3 years' time, if she was guilty, she will die of it, but the merit holds her out for a few years. So Rabbi Lezer deduces from that. So Rabbi Ben Azai deduces from that. That's good to teach your daughter Torah, so she shouldn't walk away and say, I disproved the temple. I was guilty. I had the affair, and nothing happened to me. So it's important for her to know, just because nothing happened doesn't mean nothing will happen. And Hashem, you can never escape Hashem. Rabbi Eliezer says, whoever teaches his daughter Torah teaches her a way towards lewdness. Rabbi Yeshua says, and all this will be explained later in the Talmud, not in today's day, in the next day, a woman would rather, in a small measure of food, rather than 9 measures of food and abstinence. A person rather a small measure of food and a lot of measure of being able to socialize and be with people, rather than a lot of food and a little bit of abstinence. And he used to say, a chassid shait, someone who acts foolishly, claiming he's a chassid, is going beyond the letter of the law. All this will be explained later in the Talmud. A Rosh Arm, a naked, wicked person. We'll talk about what that means. Isha Prusha, a woman who's abstinent. A Makas Prusha, and someone who is a masochist. He hurts himself in the name of trying to show he's holy and special. These people create more trouble in the world than goodness in the world. So that's what the Mishnah says. And all of the Mishnah will be expounded. Gemara will now talk about Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel, the name of Rabbi Meir, that when he learned Torah, but Rabbi Meir said when he learned by Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Meir is one of Rabbi Akiva's students, the 5 students who he got after he lost his 24,000 students. So he says, when I was learning by Rabbi Meir, and he was a scribe, Rabbi Meir was a scribe, so he was learning by Rabbi Akiva, he used to put sulfate into his ink, and he never said anything to him. Sulfate makes it that the ink is not fully erasable. There's always something left, a little mark left. When it came to Rabbi Shmuel, who was a colleague of Rabbi Akiva, he went to learn with Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel said, my son, Rabbi Meir, what do you do? What's your living? Why do you make a living? So I told him, I'm a scribe. So he told me, my son, be very careful, because your work is the work of heaven. And sometimes if you miss out one letter, or you add one letter, you can destroy the whole world. Meaning every letter in the Torah is exact. So if you say Bereshit bara Elokim and you add the Vav, Bereshit baru Elokim in the beginning, many people created. Or in other places you add a letter or you take off a letter, you can destroy the world by making the Torah be read the wrong way. So then Rabbi Meir said, I told him, so I answered him that I have one thing you should know that I do, that I put sulfate into my ink. So he told me, Rabbi Shmuel said, who put sulfate in the ink? You're not allowed to put sulfate in the ink. The Torah says, umacha, that when you write the parchment for a woman who's Sotah, you have to be able to be erased. So how can you put sulfate when it's not fully erasable? So the Gemara says, what is he saying? How does Rabbi Meir come and tell him, you should know I put sulfate in my ink? What does that have to do with the fact that he told me he's a scribe? So the Gemara says something was missing here. Rabbi Meir was saying that not only do I actually know all of the words of the Torah exactly, which words have all the letters in it, some words are missing letters, it's written a little shorthand, but I know even the laws related that maybe a fly will go on the wet ink in the parchment and will go on the crown of a dollar or something, and will maybe erase it and turn it into a resh. And turn it into a resh. And then there will be a problem. So I know that as well. But you should know, for that, I have another issue. And that is, I put sulfate in my ink. And the reason I put the sulfate in the ink is because this way it's never fully erased. and the letter wasn't changed. So the Gemara asks now a question: how could we say this? Gemara asks a question: how could we say this? We learned that Rav Meir, something doesn't make sense. It says that Rav Meir first learned by Rav Yishmael, and he said he used to put the sulfate in the ink, and he said nothing to me. Then I came to Rabbi Kiva, and he said I'm not allowed to do it. So first of all, before we said he first learned by Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Kiva, and then he came to Rabbi Yishmael. Here it says first it was Rabbi Yishmael, and then he came to Rabbi Kiva. There he said Rabbi Yishmael said you're not allowed to use sulfate. Here it says Rabbi Yishmael said you could use sulfate. He says, listen, the fact alone that first, there it says he first learned Rabbi Kiva, and then he went to Rabbi Shmuel, and then he went back to Rabbi Kiva. Could be initially he went to Rabbi Kiva when he couldn't get to the grasp everything that Rabbi Kiva was teaching. He went to learn by Rabbi Shmuel. Once he learned all of the knowledge of the Torah, then he went to Rabbi Kiva to learn and understand the svara, the ideas behind everything. So that's not a question, this process of how going from one teacher and back to the other. But when you hear, he says, Rabbi Shmuel says, you're not allowed to use it. And there he says, you're allowed to use it. How do we deal with that? And Gemara says, Kasha, we actually have a question. We're not even sure 100% how we deal with this sort of contradiction that seems to exist in this situation. Now, Rabbi Yehuda says, Rabbi Meir used to say, you're allowed to put sulfate into ink, except, meaning when you're writing a Torah and other things, you're allowed to put sulfate in the ink. The only time that you're not allowed to put sulfate in the ink is when you're writing the parchment for the Sotah, because you have to be able to erase it. Rabbi Yaakov says in his name that only for the parchment of the Sotah and the use in Beis Hamikdash, but the portion of Sotah in a regular Torah, which Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Rabbi Meir, yet you're not allowed to, even in the Torah, write the portion of Sotah with that type of ink. He says that that you're allowed to write in the Torah, except the partial Sotah you have to be able to erase. In the Torah you don't need to erase. You can use sulfate in the ink, but Sotah you have to erase fully. You're not allowed to use sulfate in the ink. So the Gemara asks, what's the difference? So the question is, if you're allowed to erase from the Torah or not. Are you allowed to take the parchment from the Torah and erase it into the potion? That's what it seems the argument. So Reb Meir holds that you're allowed to. So therefore you have to make sure you write it in a way that it doesn't have sulfate so you can erase it. That's what it seemed. But Rabbi Yaakov says that you're not allowed to. So therefore only an actual parchment you're writing for the Sotah, the woman herself, you're not allowed to put sulfate, but in the Torah, it's not a problem. So we say, perhaps, Rav Meir, Rav Yaakov are arguing in a similar argument to other Tanoim, other people of the Tanaic period. Because we learned that it says that a Megillah, you're not allowed to, a Megillah, the parchment for the Sotah was written for one woman, is not allowed to be used for someone else. Rabbi, the son of Yoshia, says that a Megillah is allowed to be used for someone else. So what's their argument? So it seemed that's the same argument. Meaning a Torah, you're writing a Torah, you're not writing for a specific person. And still, Rabbi Meir holds you're allowed to use it. So he holds like Rabbi Yoshia, they're allowed to write a Megillah for someone else. But Rabbi Yaakov says you're not allowed to write the Torah you cannot use for a Sotah, because he holds that to be written for a specific person. But Papa says not necessarily. We can't tie these two arguments with each other. Why? Because perhaps we say like this: when a Megillah is written for a specific woman, you cannot write it for someone else. But a Torah that was written for nobody, why can't you dedicate it to a person who walks into the temple? Say let's. So therefore, we can't say that the one who holds that in the Torah you can't write you cannot write in the Torah you cannot write with this type with sulfate is not necessarily arguing. Could be both people are of the same opinion. Rav Nachman Yitzchak says the opposite. He says maybe Rabbi Bar Yoshia, who says that a Megillah is you're allowed to use it for someone else, is a Megillah that was written for one woman, but it was written so it should be drank as a potion. But the Torah, you're writing just to write a Torah, you're not writing it for someone to drink. So perhaps there won't work. So therefore we can't tie, even though very often the Talmud, we want to try to tie different arguments together as they're one, but the Gemara very often tries to refute, and here refute it, says they can't tie the two arguments that we just had. Now the Gemara says, Rabbacha Bar Yoshia says, how can you use this, the same Megillah used for one woman for another? Doesn't it say when you write the get, a divorce, that if someone wrote a divorce for his wife, then decided he's not going to divorce her, and there's someone else who had the same name, him and his wife's name, and he wants to use that get to divorce his wife, he's not allowed to use it. So how come here Sotah is different? The Gemara says, there it says by divorce, but Kasala has to write it for her. So you need to write it for the person who's getting divorced. So the Gemara says, but here it says, V'asala has to make for her this potion. She says, V'asala is not the writing, it's the erasing. So it could be the writing, could be written for anybody. As long as the erasing was done for this woman, then it's fine. Then it says, it didn't take much time, and her face started, if she was guilty, her face started to turn green, etc. So who's of the opinion that this happens very quickly? So it must be Rabbi Shimon. Because Rabbi Shimon, we said before, is of the opinion that you first bring the meal offering, and then you give her to drink. So right after she drinks, she immediately takes effect. Because the other opinion that says that first you bring the drink and then you give the meal offering, it takes time till the meal offering, so it can't happen right away. So the fact the Mishnah says immediately, it must be according to Rabbi Shimon. But on the other hand, at the end of the Mishnah, it says if she has a merit, it would hold out for 1, 2, or 3 years. But that goes according to the rabbis who argue with Rabbi Shimon, because Rabbi Shimon says, as we said earlier, there is no merit. That if she's guilty, she dies right away. Nothing can give her a merit. So we say it's not. We say it's Rabbi Akiva. The Rabbi Akiva is also of the opinion that first you bring the meal offering and then you give her to drink, so immediately it takes effect. But it comes to schus, he argues with Rabbi Shimon, and he holds that the idea of merit holds up, and therefore the Rabbi Akiva said this and not Rabbi Shimon. So then, if she starts becoming all changing colors, and her veins become inflated, etc., so you have to take her out. So the Gemara says, why? Maybe she'll die. So maybe she'll die. If someone who dies is not allowed to be in the camp of the Levites, that's what Azara was not as holy as the temple itself. And not only someone who's impure, defiled by touching a dead person, but even the dead person himself is allowed to be in the camp of the Levites. Like it says, a Moshe who is a Levite carried the bones of Yosef wherever he went in the desert. So Abaye said it's not about maybe she'll die, because that's not a problem, but maybe she will menstruate. Maybe she'll menstruate. So the Gemara says, and that you're not allowed to be in the camp of the Levites when you menstruate. So the Gemara says, so what? Fear makes her all her organs of her body become weaker, and all of a sudden the blood will come out. The Gemara says, yeah, that's what happened with Esther. Esther was afraid of going into Achashverosh, and she saw her nida, she menstruated. So the Gemara says, but don't we learn, doesn't it say somewhere that fear stops the blood from flowing, not creates more blood flowing, like menstruation that opens up the various parts of the body that the blood flows? The Gemara says like this, that when you have fear, long-term fear, you're concerned, your anxiety, it closes your blood. It stops the blood from flowing. It closes the areas in the body the blood flows through. But with immediate fear, a sudden fear, that weakens you, and all of a sudden the blood can flow. And that's what happens here. It's an immediate fear. Now the Gemara says if she has a merit, the merit held out for 12 months, 2 years, or 3 years. So who is of this opinion? So not Abba Yosef ben Yochanan, not Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak, not Rabbi Shmuel, because we learned elsewhere that what kind of a merit does exist. So some say that if she has a merit the last 3 months till the time it usually takes for a child to see the woman is pregnant. Some say Abba Yosef ben Chanan that's Abba Yosef. Rabbi Elazar ben Yitzchak says 9 months, because that's how long it takes to have a child. And Rabbi Shmuel says 12 months, because we find by Daniel with the Nebuchadnezzar, when he told him he has a merit if he takes care of the poor people. Hashem will give him a merit, he won't die so quickly, he won't be hurt so quickly, and we have found that the merit held him for 12 months. to know that 12 months is a merit. But who is the one that says 3 years? So we say it's Rabbi Yishmael, because we find the verse that says that Hashem says, Al Shloisha Pishei Adaim, that says sometimes Hashem 3 times holds the merit returning again, 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 which is not just 12 months, but it becomes 3 years. This is the end of today's page. Thank you very much for joining.